Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. So you look at the last 72 hours of precipitation, we've seen relatively dry conditions overall from the Central Plains into the Eastern Corn Belt, with scattered thunderstorm activity continuing across the Northern Plains into the Upper Midwest. So we look at the last 14 days, a departure from average here. We are seeing some dry corridors setting up. A noticeable one here from central Iowa across parts of central Illinois here, where it's been rather dry over the last 2 weeks. A couple drier spots as you look up off to the north as well. And then as you look off and towards the across the rest of the Eastern Corn Belt here, you do see some dry spots continuing across parts of Indiana and then also across southern portions of the state of Ohio. Sure enough, I can't remember the last time that I showed the drought monitor map here, just because it hasn't been relevant for so many months, it seems like. But we are seeing some early dry spots here, some low-level drought starting to show up here across parts of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. Now, that's not to say that I'm concerned suddenly about this, rapidly expanding. It's just, it's somewhat interesting that suddenly we're actually talking about dryness here after months and months of this very wet and very active pattern across the region. So we look at the jet stream here on Friday morning. We continue to see this broader ridge overall across the western United States, but we're seeing these troughs kind of traveling along that, and that's what's bringing the thunderstorm activity parts of the northern plains, and eventually going to bring some rain opportunities to parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt as we get to the back half of the weekend and early next week. So we look at the satellite picture here, infrared satellite, so we're looking at the cloud top temperatures. We can see a storm system off to the north across the Canadian prairies. We've got a front extending off to the south with that, and that has triggered some thunderstorm activity across portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin early this morning. That's lingering from last night, and that's going to be an area that we'll continue to watch for thunderstorm development as we head through the rest of the day on Friday. You can also see the clockwise flow around this area of high pressure off to the west, with thunderstorm activity flaring up in that region as well. And then off to the south, we've still got this lingering frontal boundary that brought us the relief over the weekend, or earlier this week, I should say, in the form of this cooler and less humid air mass across the Corn Belt. That front lingers now across the Gulf Coast, keeping thunderstorm activity ongoing in that area. Here's a look at the radar picture then, what's going on underneath those clouds here on Friday morning. And again, here's the thunderstorm activity across Minnesota and Wisconsin. We've got some rain showers kind of decaying across parts of Iowa and Illinois, no significant precipitation there. And then seeing the thunderstorm activity off to the south as well. Once we get into the afternoon, that's when you'll start to see the thunderstorm activity flaring back up across parts of the desert southwest. The surface picture here on Friday morning, again, here is the storm system across the Canadian prairies with that front extending off to the south. Now, this will continue to move off to the east just ever so slowly, but leaving this front kind of draped across the region. And that's why we'll continue to watch this area over the next 3 to 4 days as being the primary area of focus for shower and thunderstorm development here, the area that's going to see the most widespread coverage as disturbances kind of travel along this boundary. Now, over time, it will make some progress, making it into this region here by the time we get to Monday and Tuesday. But again, it's going to be slow going, so as we go through the weekend, really focusing on this area for the most widespread, the highest opportunities for precipitation until we get into next week. So what does this look like with the high-resolution rapid refresh model? This is just going to take us through the day on Friday. You'll watch these rain showers really begin to wane across parts of Illinois. So again, you're seeing some precipitation reflected there in the forecast, but not expecting anything significant. You'll really watch the frontal boundary off to the north across parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. We'll go ahead and play it. There you go, seeing that flare up across, again, portions of eastern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin, in the form of some scattered showers and storms, maybe an isolated strong storm in there as well. And then, of course, seeing the area over the desert southwest flaring back up as well. Now, eventually, as we head through the weekend, we'll jump over to the high-resolution NAM model. We're going to watch another disturbance tracking out of the northern plains, and that's going to lead to more widespread shower and storm activity across parts of the northern plains into the upper Midwest. Again, focusing on this general corridor for the shower and thunderstorm activity over the next 3 to 4 days. So let's go ahead and play it out. You'll watch this frontal boundary kind of stall out across the area with shower and storm activity flaring back up on that. Here we go through Saturday, and then getting into Sunday, seeing that next disturbance emerge across the northern plains, bringing more widespread precipitation. Let's go ahead and we'll jump through time with this one just to time it out for you. So going all the way back to Friday morning, heading through Friday afternoon, we've already kind of covered this, but watching parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin for that thunderstorm activity Friday afternoon and evening. As we head through Saturday morning now, seeing it rather quiet, watching that frontal boundary kind of stalling across this region. Saturday afternoon, thunderstorm activity flaring up across parts of the western high plains, across the Dakotas here, and that continues off to the east as we head through Sunday morning. So by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, then focusing in on this region for the more widespread shower and storm activity. And this is going to be the disturbance that eventually pushes this front into parts of the central and the eastern Corn Belt. We'll look at that with the European long-range model in just a moment. Total accumulated precipitation from that run of the high-resolution NAM model. And again, you're able to see the corridor here that we're focusing on just through the weekend, keeping the rain and thunderstorm activity anywhere from the Dakotas into parts of the upper Midwest, Central Plains into the eastern Corn Belt. You're remaining dry until we at least get into Monday and Tuesday, start to bring this front through the region. The next 3 days of severe weather outlooks here, we've got Saturday, or Friday, I'm sorry, in the top left corner, watching parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin for the best chance for some of that shower and thunderstorm activity to potentially turn strong to severe. You can see that the front is draped across right there. By the time we get to Saturday, here's where that frontal boundary lingers. We see the potential for some thunderstorms developing across parts of southern Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, far northern Illinois, perhaps an isolated strong storm. The same holds true back towards the western high plains across parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. As we get into Sunday on the bottom now, we're bringing this next disturbance eastward. That's where we see the chance for some showers and storms potentially turning strong to severe, anywhere from eastern Nebraska through western Iowa into southern Minnesota. As we head through the rest of the week then, here's what we're looking at with the high-resolution NAM model. Again, starting on Friday, this broader ridge off to the west, disturbances traveling along and off to the north of that, riding along over the top of that ridge, bringing the thunderstorm activity into this region. So let's go ahead, we'll go through time with this one, kind of taking it out over the next 7 to 10 days. As we go through the weekend now, so here we are Friday, we're rolling through Saturday, Sunday. Now Monday, here's this more well-defined trough making its way through. This is the one that's going to bring at least isolated rain chances to the eastern Corn Belt Monday and Tuesday. Here we go through the day on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're watching this ridge build back into the same region here over the central and the western United States, allowing that heat to kind of rebuild across the region. We head through now Thursday and then Friday, getting into next weekend now. So we're way out there, all the way into the 10-day forecast. Again, by the time we get to, this would be August 4th, seeing this ridge really setting up over the western U.S., troughing over the eastern United States. So this would be a warmer pattern over a big chunk of the Corn Belt, but maybe closer to average when we talk about portions of the far, eastern into the east central portions of the Corn Belt, talking about Iowa and Missouri eastward from there. We got some disagreements between the European and the long-range model, the European long-range model and the American GFS model is what I'm trying to say. Some big disagreements, so I'm not entirely confident on where we're headed beyond the 7 to 10 day time frame. We'll show some of that here in just a moment. Looking at the temperature anomaly forecasts, this will kind of convey the point here where the GFS really wants to keep things cooler overall across the Corn Belt. Whereas when we look at the European model here, you're seeing some fluctuations here. And we'll time this out here again, bringing it back. Again, keeping the cooler air mass here Friday morning across the central and eastern Corn Belt, but we will start to warm as we head through the weekend. But as that front comes through Monday and Tuesday, this is the same one that brings our first rain chance in quite some time to the eastern Corn Belt. Also brings kind of a reinforcing shot of some cooler air as we talk about early to middle next week. Again, talking about the eastern Corn Belt here, east of the Mississippi River. At the same time, that ridge is kind of rebuilding across the central U.S., starting to bring warmer temperatures back into the central plains, into the northern plains, as we talk about the first few days of August, and then kind of keeping things, maybe a warmer bias, but just a little bit closer to average. So, if I had to kind of describe the next 7 to 10 days, we're not seeing any strong signal that we're headed back to, an all-out ridge with, record-setting heat, shutting down the precipitation. But on the flip side, not really headed toward a pattern that's going to bring any extended cold weather into the region either. So seeing kind of just a pattern that's going to lead to some fluctuations, especially across the central and eastern Corn Belt, and then perhaps eventually leading to some more precipitation across this very dry region. We'll look at the precipitation forecast then from the European model. We'll do the same thing. We'll bring it back to Friday and step through time. As we talk about Friday afternoon, watching Wisconsin and Minnesota for the more widespread shower and storm activity. But as we quickly go through the weekend here, you're still seeing this corridor here from the Dakotas into the upper Midwest being the primary area. So here we go. We're in through Sunday now, getting into Monday afternoon. Now here is that frontal boundary. That's what's bringing the isolated to scattered thunderstorm activity back to the central and eastern Corn Belt. When we talk about parts of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, into Kentucky and Tennessee, we're not talking about any widespread precipitation chances. Some folks are going to get missed by this event here Monday and Tuesday. Others may get a good downpour or two from some of these heavier thunderstorms, but at this point, unless we see some things change, when we look at the forecast here Monday and Tuesday, looking at more isolated to scattered thunderstorm activity along this front as it moves through the region. And it's kind of a one-shot chance there as that front moves through. You know, we don't see it lingering. We don't see it stalling out across the region. There's kind of this next wave that follows on Wednesday, but that's really begun to wane or lose some of its impressive appearance here. This is certainly dying out across parts of Minnesota and Illinois by the time it gets into the region. So drier overall across the central and eastern Corn Belt, even though we do have this chance for some isolated to scattered storms on Monday and Tuesday. Now we head off into the middle to later parts of next week, and this is where we really start to lose some confidence within the details, but starting to see this pattern where maybe if we keep northwest flow in the region, perhaps getting a chance or two of some showers and storms in the later parts of next week. You're seeing this more significant wave move through here. This is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next week, so talking about August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. But this is a new feature. This was not on, the previous model run. So you got to exercise caution and getting too excited about something that suddenly appears. But it's just noticing the pattern overall. It remains dry from the Central Plains into the Eastern Corn Belt, though it does look like there will be some opportunities for some precipitation as we head into next week. The total precipitation accumulation forecast here from the European model, and we'll do the same thing here. I'm going to stop it here on Thursday because this is about as far out as I've got strong confidence. You see the pattern reflected well. There's more significant precipitation in that corridor from the northern plains into the upper Midwest. You see the nature that I just conveyed to you across the central and eastern Corn Belt. That's scattered precipitation look. That's with the front clearing the area there. And you're seeing some corridors here where the model wants to suggest, some clusters of thunderstorms. But you do see some areas that are drier in that forecast. And that's where I think that, some folks are going to come out on the other side of this thing in parts of Illinois and Indiana on Tuesday or Wednesday, not having seen any precipitation from this frontal boundary moving through the area. The reason I paused it is because we get beyond that, and now you're seeing that corridor of the heavier precipitation from this new wave that comes out next weekend in the 8, 9, and 10-day time frame that I just don't have high confidence on. Now, as we look at the differences between the two models here, the European is on the left. Over here, we've got the GFS, the American model, on the right. And what I want to do is I'm going to play this out. We're going to get this going towards the end of the loop here. As we head through, we'll just start at the beginning. Starting on Friday, we're seeing some good similarities here. We're seeing the ridge overall over the western United States. We're seeing these troughs kind of travel over the top of that, kind of going through the northern plains into the Great Lakes region. That's what's dragging the front through the region Monday, Tuesday, bringing some folks some rain in the eastern Corn Belt. We see the ridge build back in by the time we get to midweek. That is an agreement between the two models. But the difference you're seeing now is the GFS kind of a little more impressive look with this trough over the Gulf Coast here as we get into the end of next week and next weekend. And as this trough over the top of the ridge kind of dives into this region, you're going to kind of see more of an interaction between the two of those. Now, it's not quite so dramatic on the picture I'm showing you right now, where we're seeing, again, kind of a play between the two features here, giving us a more amplified trough over the east, whereas the GFS is a little bit more broad with the flow, the ridge in the west, and then a more gradual drop-off over the eastern United States. Now, if you were a meteorologist and you're hoping for some more agreement to show up overnight, you didn't get that. Here's what we got from the overnight run from the GFS on the right, seeing a dramatic play between those two troughs here, and that's what, again, gives us the ridge in the west, and then a big trough over the eastern United States. A look like this, that is a very cool pattern across the eastern Corn Belt from anywhere from Iowa and Missouri eastward through Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and that's why the GFS continues to suggest a cooler pattern the first week of August. You don't see that big play, you don't see the big dramatic trough on the European model, and that's why, again, that keeps things in the eastern Corn Belt here at least closer to average, maybe a few degrees warmer than average as we head into the beginning of August. So that's, again, why I'm kind of showing you the details as we head through the early to middle part of next week. But beyond that, we really got to work on getting some agreement here, kind of dive into some of the details and try and figure out where we're headed in the 7 to 10 day time frame. We'll finish up with the temperatures here. You're starting to see some of the heat rebound into the central and eastern Corn Belt. Still a very pleasant day in this region. We're still waking up to temperatures in the lower 60s here, which just feels fantastic. But into the the lower to middle 90s here for the day on Friday across the Central Plains. Here's your high temperatures as we head to the day Saturday, Sunday. On Monday, now we're starting to see that next storm system or that next frontal boundary sag through the region. And you'll notice a dramatic drop here as we get into the day on Tuesday, starting to get a reinforcing shot of a cooler, less humid air mass. Now you notice not dramatically cold by any stretch of the imagination, but middle 80s for the high temperatures with dew points in the 60s. That'll feel just fine across the eastern Corn Belt. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Monday morning ag forecast video, and I'll have your next Corn Belt regional update midday on Tuesday. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.